There is a particular kind of quiet that follows displeasing someone you care about. Not shouting, not conflict, just a subtle drop in temperature. A warmth that was there a moment ago and now, mysteriously, is not. You did nothing catastrophic. You simply disagreed, or hesitated, or wanted something they did not want. And yet the room feels colder, and some part of you begins, almost immediately, calculating how to warm it back up. Why does another person's silence sometimes feel louder than anything they could have said? Why do you find yourself adjusting, apologizing, softening, before you have even understood what happened? Before we explore this together, subscribe to this channel where we uncover the hidden psychology behind everyday life. Picture a lantern that only stays lit when you behave in exactly the way its keeper prefers. The moment you step slightly out of line, a boundary, an opinion, a simple "no, the light dims," not extinguished entirely, just enough to remind you what darkness might feel like if you continue. You do not choose to fear the dark. You are simply taught, moment by moment, that the light is conditional, and conditional light has a way of making a person perform for its return. Is that warmth ever really warmth? Or is it a mechanism, disguised carefully as affection? Carl Jung believed that beneath every persona, the acceptable face shown to the world, lives a shadow, the part of the self too uncomfortable to display directly. But what happens when someone learns to control others not through open demand, but through the careful withdrawal of approval? What if the coldest silence you've ever experienced was never really about anger at all, but about influence? This is the behavior worth naming plainly. When someone withholds warmth, attention, or approval specifically in response to your independence, and restores it only once you have returned to the shape they prefer, they are not simply reacting. They are training you, quietly, consistently, often without ever raising their voice. Why does this method work so effectively when it involves no threats, no arguments, nothing you could point to directly? Perhaps because it does not attack you. It simply removes something you had come to rely on, and the absence of something familiar can feel more unbearable than any direct confrontation ever could. Consider how it unfolds. You express a need, and they go quiet, not cruelly, just distantly. Just enough to make the air feel unfinished. You ask if something is wrong, and they say nothing is, in a tone that confirms something clearly is. Hours pass. You find yourself replaying the moment, searching for what you did, offering small apologies for things you are not even certain were wrong. And then, once you have sufficiently adjusted, the warmth returns, gently, as though nothing happened at all. Was that reconciliation? Or was it simply the light being turned back on, now that you have learned the cost of turning it off? Jung might have said this is the shadow operating through withdrawal, rather than aggression control exercised not by taking something forcefully, but by making its absence unbearable enough that you correct yourself before it needs to be demanded at all. And here is the harder question. How many of your own instincts have you already softened, simply to avoid that particular silence? Alfred Adler believed that much of human behavior is shaped by an underlying drive for significance, for control over one's circumstances, especially in those who feel, somewhere beneath the surface, that they have very little of it. Someone who manages affection like a dimmer switch may not experience themselves as cruel at all. They may experience themselves as simply protecting a fragile sense of security the only way they know how, by ensuring the people around them never stray too far from what feels safe to them. Does that make it acceptable? Not necessarily. But does it change what you are actually looking at? Perhaps. So why does this leave you doubting your own perception, rather than simply feeling wronged? Because withdrawal is difficult to name. There is no incident to point to, no sentence you can repeat to someone else and expect them to immediately understand. Just an absence, and the exhausting work of trying to fill it. Picture the tree standing bare through winter, its branches empty, appearing from a distance like something finished. Beneath the surface, unseen, the roots continue widening in the dark. Is bareness always simply loss? Or can recognizing a pattern that once controlled you be the very thing that allows something new to grow underneath it? This is the turn worth making gently here. Noticing this pattern and feeling disturbed by it is not a flaw in you. It may be the early stage of something Jung called individuation, the slow, uneven process of learning to trust your own steadiness rather than someone else's shifting approval. Individuation in a moment like this rarely feels like relief right away. It tends to feel, at first, like guilt for finally seeing clearly what you had spent so long trying not to see. So what do you do with a coldness you can feel but cannot always prove? This is where the observer becomes essential, the quiet witness inside you that can notice the temperature of a room changing without immediately rushing to fix it. Not the part of you that apologizes automatically, unsure exactly what for. The part that can simply notice, calmly, this warmth seems to disappear whenever I have a need of my own. And that pattern is worth naming honestly, even if only to myself. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that it is not events themselves that disturb a person, but the judgments attached to them. Can you feel someone's silence and pause there, rather than immediately deciding it means you have done something wrong? Can you hold the discomfort as information rather than as instruction for how you must now behave? And here is something worth noticing. If you look honestly, this particular coldness has likely visited you before. Different face, different year, the same peculiar sense of shrinking slightly in exchange for someone else's approval returning. Why does life seem to repeat this exact lesson, dressed differently each time, until it is finally understood in full? Jung believed that whatever remains unconscious in us tends to reappear in our lives as pattern as the uncanny sense of having stood in this exact place before, with someone else, in another year entirely. Perhaps this is not simply about the person currently withholding their warmth from you. Perhaps it is the newest version of an older question. When did you first learn that love, or its appearance, was something you had to earn back after disappointing someone? Viktor Frankl believed that between what happens to a person and how they respond, a space exists narrow, but entirely their own. You cannot control whether someone chooses silence as a form of influence. But the space between noticing that pattern and continuing to shrink in response to it, that space belongs entirely to you. So what would it actually look like to grow through this, rather than simply adapt to it further? Not something dramatic. Not a single confrontation meant to resolve everything at once. It might look like allowing someone's disappointment to exist without immediately rushing to repair it. It might look like sitting with a silence, uncomfortable as it is, without filling it with an apology you do not actually owe. It might look like choosing your own steadiness over someone else's shifting approval, even when steadiness feels lonelier in the moment. It might look like recognizing, calmly, that warmth offered conditionally was never entirely warmth to begin with. None of this arrives with fanfare. Jung once suggested that people will do almost anything to avoid confronting an uncomfortable truth, and if that is true, then simply naming a pattern you have spent years quietly accommodating may already be a significant act of courage. Return, for a moment, to the lantern, dimming and brightening according to someone else's will. Imagine looking at it now, not to demand it stay lit, not to punish whoever holds it, but simply to understand what it has actually been doing this entire time. Does that make the light less familiar? Or does it simply mean you can finally see it for what it is? And so, we return to the question beneath this entire pattern, beneath every withdrawn warmth, every silence you tried so hard to fix, every small piece of yourself quietly surrendered in exchange for approval returning. What actually remains of you? once you no longer require someone else's warmth to feel steady? What remains when your own sense of worth no longer rises and falls with someone else's mood? Jung offered an answer that has outlasted him by nearly a century. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Perhaps the coldness you have been enduring was never actually about you at all. Perhaps it was simply a pattern, finally visible, waiting only for you to stop mistaking its absence of light for something you were required to earn. If this resonated, subscribe to this channel and join us as we keep uncovering these hidden truths. What is one moment you chose your own steadiness over someone else's approval? Write it in the comments below. And let that lantern, wherever you find it, finally answer to no one but you.